Chapter 14, Mr. Willy Wonka. Mr. Wonka was standing all alone just inside the open gates of the factory. And what an extraordinary little man he was. He had a black top hat on his head. He wore a tail coat made of a beautiful plum-coloured velvet. His trousers were bottle green. His gloves were pearly grey. And in one hand he carried a fine, gold-topped walking cane. Covering his chin, there were a small, neat, pointed black beard, a goatee, and his eyes were the most marvellously bright. They seemed to be sparkling and twinkling at you all of the time. The whole face, in fact, was alight with fun and laughter. And oh, how clever he looked. How quick and sharp and full of life. He kept making quick, jerky little movements with his head, cocking it this way and that, and taking everything in with those bright, twinkling eyes. He was like a squirrel in the quickness of his movements, like a quick, clever, old squirrel from the park. Suddenly, he did a funny little skipping dance in the snow, and he spread his arms wide, and he smiled at the 5 children who were clustered near the gates, and he called out, "Welcome, my friends, welcome to the factory." His voice was high and fluty. "Will you come forward one at a time, please?" he called out. "And bring your parents. Then show me your golden ticket and give me your name. Who's first?" The big fat boy stepped up. "I'm Augustus Gloop," he said. "Augustus!" cried Mr. Wonka, seizing his hand and pumping it up and down with terrific force. "My dear boy, how good to see you. Delighted, charmed, overjoyed to have you with us. And these are your parents? How nice. Come in, that's right, step through the gates." Mr. Wonka was clearly just as excited as everybody else. "My name," said the next child to go forward, "is Veruca Salt." "My dear Veruca, how do you do? What a pleasure this is. You do have an interesting name, don't you? I always thought that a Veruca was a sort of wart that you got on the sole of your foot. But I must be wrong, mustn't I? How pretty you look in that lovely mink coat. I'm so glad you could come. Dear me, this is going to be such an exciting day. I do hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. I know you will. Your father? How are you, Mr. Salt? And Mrs. Salt, overjoyed to see you. Yes, the ticket is quite in order. Please go in." The next 2 children, Violet Beauregard and Mike Teavee, came forward to have their tickets examined and then to have their arms practically pumped off their shoulders by the energetic Mr. Wonka. And last of all, a small, nervous voice whispered, "Charlie Bucket." "Charlie!" cried Mr. Wonka. Well, so there you are. You're the one who found your ticket only yesterday, aren't you?" Yes, I read all about it in the morning's papers. Just in time, my dear boy. I'm so glad, so happy for you. And this, your grandfather? Delighted to meet you, sir. Overjoyed, enraptured, enchanted. All right, excellent. Is everybody in now? 5 children? Yes, good. Now, will you please follow me? Our tour is about to begin, but do keep together. Please don't wander off by yourselves. I shouldn't like to lose any of you at this stage in the proceedings. Oh, dear me, no! Charlie glanced back over his shoulder and saw the great iron entrance gate slowly closing behind him. The crowds on the outside were still pushing and shouting. Charlie took a last look at them. Then, as the gates closed with a clang, all sight of the outside world disappeared.